that literally it
Nibiru, but it is a dwarf star. It's either a red dwarf or a brown dwarf star. Now, the object, which is clearly Planet X by deductive logic and process of elimination, is therefore now between Mars and Jupiter. It's not in the outer reaches of the solar system. It can clearly be seen, especially from the southern hemisphere.
The implications and the side effects of what might happen to us here on Earth is pretty scary. We're going to get into some of that. Now, one of the cool things that David discusses with us here is instead of having to just take his word for it, he gives you coordinates on where you can actually see it for yourself. Mid-2017, he says we're going to see an eclipse with Nibiru. He has been able to take his background and transition it into research on Planet X, and has recently compiled an awesome book with a treasure trove of information. David, how the heck are you?
Very good tonight, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you coming on here with us. I know that you had reached out to us a few weeks ago. You've got a really cool book coming up here that's going to break everything down with Nibiru. You know, let's talk about what you do.
Well, the way I got into it, I've always believed in following the money. About 5 years ago, I got into some research on the Pentagon black budget. And I don't know if you recall, but you probably do, that the day before 9/11, Don Rumsfeld announced at a Pentagon news conference that the agency was 2.2 trillion short. Money was simply missing, 2.2, not billion, but trillion. So having worked for a period of time at the Pentagon, I realized this was most likely black budget funds. And I did some investigation, and I ran across a couple of areas, basically the deep underground military base research done by Jesse Ventura, done by Phil Schneider, done by other personalities. And I realized, of course, that's likely the source of the lost money. It's black budget ops, and it's being spent. And why is it being spent in terms of these type of bases? So that's how my curiosity was picked, you might say. These bases, I understand, are built away primarily from geologic tectonic areas, but again, when Planet X passes, you're going to have new geotectonic faults established when you have force 11, 12, 13, 14 earthquakes. So I don't know how safe they're going to be. It could be a lost investment for those people. In any case, that was my basic introduction about 5 years ago, and then I got into the science of the topic. My understanding, and this is partly from Phil Schneider, I know he worked 11 years at Groom Lake, Area 51. He says the black budget varies between 0.2 trillion and 1.2 trillion per year. I'm not sure when the inception started. It was absolutely going on in the late 70s and 80s. He says a couple of dozen of these may be reasonable for protection. I agree, nuclear protection. But the question is, why do we have over 130 of these?
Well, and you know, not only that, if we could get into some of the more scientific stuff as well.
Because it's so close now, it's different. When it was first observed, probably the first time it was actually observed, it was observed in the infrared spectrum in 1983 by a orbiting Earth satellite telescope called the Infrared Astronomical Satellite. And this is when all those articles appeared in the Washington Post and the New York Times and so forth. And that's when, right before blackout occurred, there were some articles over a 6 to 12 month period of time when it was pretty much spoken freely of. And then all of a sudden, I think they realized the seriousness of the matter, and they went ahead and produced a blackout. Now, remember this, the blue daytime sky is going to hide Planet X until it eclipses the sun. But there is going to be a full disk solar eclipse right after September 23rd, 2017. This occurs if you look at moon charts, on October 5th, 2017. And what happens, of course, during a full disk solar eclipse is the sky turns black, and that will reveal at that point, that week, in my opinion, the week of October 5th to 12th, according, if the book of Revelation is true, because this ties in perfectly with it, that could well be the exact month that we can first see it with the naked eye. So, in my opinion, combined with a predictive computer-generated astronomical model, the Bible, the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse, tells us that the red dragon, or Planet X, or Nibiru, appears after September 23rd, 17, but it has to appear before October 11th, 2017. At that date, October 11th, 2017, the sign in Virgo, the woman Virgo, will no longer be, quote, pregnant. Then the red dragon, or Planet X, therefore must make it an appearance before October 11th. So that seems to be a cutoff date. Jupiter, which is known as the planet or the star of the Messiah, exits Virgo, the Virgin, on October 11th, after having spent, I believe, 301 days, or about 42 weeks, in the, quote, womb region of that constellation. And again, after that point, the woman will no longer be pregnant. So that gives us a very narrow window, just to use the book of Revelation or the Apocalypse as sort of an intel briefing. And the great sign of the woman, is described in Revelation 12, 1-2, forms and lasts for a few hours. And according, again, to astronomical models, this sign has never before occurred in human history. It will occur once on September 23rd, 27. It will never occur again. And I believe it places us right at the time frame from that analysis of the Planet X approach to the Earth. I would prepare on or before the fall of 2017. I would conduct emergency preparedness. Of course, you want to be spiritually ready. You want to have a clear conscience and all that, but you need to do physical preparations as well. I think survival gear, emergency food, that sort of thing. And the reason is that, again, all this while you're going to get increasing levels of disinformation from the mass media until it's actually there. And then they're going to say, whoops, we didn't have any notice, we don't know what happened, and so forth. And they're going to run and hide in what they've already established. But, you know, the public is there, and the public has to fend for itself. This global warming, as you've heard, I'm sure, is a cover story. The Earth is heating up from the core outward because of the approach of Planet X. During the 20th century, I think there were 35 volcanic eruptions in a typical year. Now there are more than 35 of these every single day. So basically, when X approaches, that week you see it in the sky, let's say it's October of 2017, you know, for purposes of discussion, at that point, it's not going to actually collide, I don't believe, with the Earth. The Earth is only 8,000 miles in diameter. It may pass 5, 10, 15 million miles away, but it has a very high magnetic attraction. It's going to have a gravitronic effect. It's going to cause the shifting of the Earth's crust. It's going to cause major volcanic activity. It's going to cause tidal waves. And when a pole shift happens, the ocean literally comes up out of its basin. So you're going to have major weather changes, seismic activity, and volcanic eruptions. Probably at that point, Yellowstone, the Yellowstone super caldera, will likely erupt. That could affect up to a third of the United States, cover it with ash.
Well, let me jump in here for a second. I'm glad you brought that up, because you can clearly tell a difference now with how hot the sun is. I mean, even if you look at the same temperature, you know, 75 degrees now versus 75 degrees 10 years ago, although it's the same temperature, the sun on your skin even, there's just more heat there.
If you go to the book of Revelation, the Revelation indicates that the sun is going to be hotter at that time frame. Now, the EMP effect, Planet X has a massive tail. It's fantastically charged. It's magnetic. The tail has moons and rocks in it. Now, this can down aircraft and satellite when it passes. It can affect the electrical grid. Now, of course, NASA, JPL, and the other disinformation sources ignore this data. But here are the facts. The Earth has a nickel and iron core. Now, this generates its magnetic field. However, the magnetosphere has large holes in it. The magnetosphere is a static shield. Now, under routine solar conditions, it protects the Earth from coronal mass ejections. But when Planet X arrives, we're no longer under routine solar conditions. Now, you know that the magnetic poles have been shifting towards Russia at maybe 40 miles an hour a year. But when Planet X arrives, the physical poles will shift. Now, this will create some hyper-earthquakes, tsunamis, and the shifting of land masses. So if you want to look at a few different states, one thing people can do to protect themselves is simply be in the right location when it happens. Now, there's a few states to avoid. And California is highly dangerous. It's composed of rock plates. Now, when rock is compressed, it breaks. And you'll see the crumbling of rock, of course, as this mass goes upwards. Now, the West Coast will have major catastrophic changes, synergistic proportions, tidal waves, high hurricane-force winds, earthquakes on the fault lines, volcanic activity over the magma. So it's highly dangerous. And I think the long-term danger is in riding out the shifts for those who are living near the boundaries of plates. Now, cities without mountains as a backdrop can just be washed out to sea. You'll have broken gas and water lines. San Francisco, it's on the San Andreas and other fault lines. A lot of the population will be trapped. Water will overflow the city. Survival will be minimal. California is not a good bet. Now, the area around Arizona, on the other hand, the Hoover Dam probably won't survive because of earthquake activity. And you'll have rivers flooding, and areas within rivers should probably be avoided. But you look at Phoenix and some of these main cities. Arizona has withstood many a pole shift. The area around Tucson is safe. Florida is another very dangerous state. Its highest elevation is 105 meters in the Panhandle. And but as for Central and South Florida and the Keys, these parts can be devastated by a tide of water. Colorado, for example, is a safe area. The domestic division of the CIA is relocating to Colorado. That should give viewers many clues right there. And of course, one of the safest parts of the country is the Ozarks, northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, average elevation close to 1,000 feet, self-sufficient water supply, agricultural land. They'll do well. They're also isolated from large metropolitan areas, and they're well enough inland to avoid flooding through, tidal waves. So it's part of the preparation is probably geographic. But I would expect when it hits, when you see this object in the sky, you'll have 1 to 2 days to accumulate all of the emergency food and water you can. I would accumulate at least a 3-month supply. I would highly recommend people educate themselves, understand the whole picture, and probably take action at that point.
Wise men said, just walk this way.
NASA's Spitzer and Swift space telescopes have found a rare brown dwarf in our solar system. These elusive objects have baffled scientists for quite some time. The discovery could provide new information about how they came into existence. RT's Brigida Santos is live tonight in our LA studio. Brigida, for our audience tonight, let's get clarification. What is a brown dwarf?
Ed, a brown dwarf is believed to be the missing link between stars and planets. Now, they have a mass up to 80 times that of Jupiter. This particular dwarf is about 30 to 65 times the mass of Jupiter. Now, less than 1% of stars that are the size of our sun have a brown dwarf orbiting within a distance 3 times that of the distance between our sun and Earth. This dwarf is more special because they believe that it's actually closer than that in an area that they typically refer to as the brown dwarf desert. This means that that desert may not be as dry as they had initially thought that it was. And the reason why it's important for scientists to observe these objects is because they are further away from the sun, which makes them much easier to do research on. Now, the lead author of this study says, quote, "We want to understand how brown dwarfs form around stars and why there is a gap in where they are found relative to their host stars." Back to you, Ed.
Well, assignments, I understand, have been updated for astronauts headed into the International Space Station next year. What's the latest on that?
So crew members have been reduced. Russia has decided to send fewer of its cosmonauts into the ISS. Typically, Roscosmos, the Russian space station, has sent 3 astronauts. It's now sending 2, which does mean that all of the missions that are planned are going to be short 1 member. Russia has offered to sell the vacant seat to NASA, but it's unclear whether NASA will take up that offer. And this does not mean that Russia is getting out of the space game or slowing down even. In fact, they are planning to launch a new segment of the ISS next year or in 2018, depending on when it's actually finished. And at that time, they're going to be sending additional crew members up to the ISS. But right now, it's really about cutting costs for them and saving money. Now, the first ISS mission of 2017 is scheduled to take place in March, and during that time, they are going to send Russian cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin, who is going to act as the commander, along with one member of NASA, astronaut Jack Fisher. And from there, about 4 other ISS missions will take place between May and November of next year, Ed.
All right, Brigida Santos reporting tonight from Los Angeles. Thanks, Brigida.
Now, what I'm going to show you here is the approximate position of the Nibiru and its 7 planets coming in. Because this is apparently a genuine photograph, in the center there with this red with the black dot and the what appears to be a planet up to the left. It's coming in, this photograph, what I'm going to show you on Stellarium, is set up for Hobart, Tasmania, south of Australia. And you'll see Jupiter. Now, if you just notice around here, the stars aren't that numerous. And I think what's happening is that the light coming from the distant stars are being absorbed into the rear of the magnetic field because the light is being bent. I mean, light is bending in space all the time. In the old Cathay ray tubes, which is the old television sets, that's how a television set works. You bend the light electrons coming at the screen. So I'll now go over to Stellarium and show you the same scene, basically. So there's Jupiter there. We'll pull that over. So in this area here is where I was showing you. Now I'm going to show you what happens when we get out and away from that spot that I've determined where this is going to be, and you'll see how the light comes on. And then as we go back towards where I think that the Nibiru object is the lights go out, so I go back again, the lights go on. So the light is being bent and absorbed by the Nibiru object. So we'll go up now towards Taurus, which is up here, and you'll see the light comes on again. There's Taurus there. The light's going off and on. So possibly this hasn't been noticed by the authorities. I'll just go up again. Now she comes on again. Come back down. Jupiter just goes off screen. Now we'll go left and right. Give it some perspective. Light comes on, off. The light comes on again. So it would appear to be around this area here. Not to say that it is, but it appears to be
like rats. If that water is from the Pacific Ocean, maybe it will be full of radiation, and maybe it will contaminate all of their fresh food down there. Maybe the air that comes in will be full of radiation, because all over America, tests are showing that our air is just full of radiation. And maybe this is why the French psychic, could not see past 2012. Maybe that's why all those who did time travel said that there was a barrier after 2012. When pressed, the French psychic said, 2 possible reasons: we have a war with aliens, or I'm dead, and that's why I can't see beyond 2012. Well, you've got strontium in the air, which causes bone cancer, and plutonium, which affects all the organs and tissues. And thousands are already dying from the radiation from Fukushima. Remember that Fukushima is about 10 times worse than Chernobyl. Chernobyl was 180 tons of radioactive material, and Fukushima was 1,760 tons. So that's almost 10 times as much. Fukushima is 9 or 10 times as bad as Chernobyl. I've got some shrimp and salmon in the freezer, and I think I'm going to go cook it while the electricity is still on. I already ate all the butter pecan ice cream, and if you have any ice cream that you can't eat, call me. I'll be over there faster than you can say, "Those dirty bastards in government saved themselves and left us out here to die." How long does it take to say that? How do you like this? The U.S. military is guarding the DUMBs so that you can't get in. They will shoot to kill. They will kill Americans to prevent them from getting into the underground facilities. Well, I don't want to breathe the same air those people breathe. I might wind up like them. So no thanks. I'm not interested in going into a DUMB. These military have already been tested to see if they are loyal to the head Nazi, and they proved that they will follow orders. They will kill anyone they are told to kill. And they think they're heroes. Their reality is not the same as your reality. They live in an illusionary world. I would consider it mental illness because they don't know reality. Soon all the banks will be closed and you won't be able to get any money out. And I have been advocating that you get your money out of the bank anyway. And what I have seen on this video with Patty is that the money you hold will only be worth something for a little while longer. And soon, nobody will be interested in your money. They're not going to trade real food for fake money. We have been expecting a currency collapse anyway. I just had no idea that it would turn out like this. If you have a house that's made of cement block and a roof that's not made of wood, that's valuable. And there isn't any amount of money that I would trade for such a house. Now the value system changes. If you've got a caterpillar, a bulldozer, a backhoe, this is extremely valuable. This is worth millions of dollars, even if you paid $6,000 for it, because this is the difference between life and death. Perhaps. I don't know what you call life after something like this. You come out of your nest and breathe radioactive material that will be in the air for thousands of years. You call that life? Look up Patty Brassard, Brassard, on YouTube. Watch the videos, the interviews. There's one with Veritas Radio out of Tucson, and that interviewer is very smart. The sound quality is pretty good. There's another one where they talk about the kill shot, and they put the date August 5th, 2013. The sound quality is very poor. Very, very poor. It's difficult to hear the announcer. It's difficult to hear his guest. There was no attention whatsoever given to this video on quality, and if you're able to get anything out of it, that's great. There's a lot of blank space, so it means the audio was not edited, and because of these reasons, it's not a very good quality video. But it's the best you have at this time. You might wonder what is going to happen to Patty. Well, she said she's old, and she's already lived far longer than she expected to. She's falling apart because she carried an M16 across her chest, and the bullets were either depleted uranium or enriched uranium. Can you imagine the U.S. government having soldiers carry radioactive material so close to the chest? This is disgusting, disgusting. And this story should spread to all military so they know how the government really thinks of them. Listen to Patty's testimony. She was in Iraq. She was in communications. These lives meant nothing to the Nazis. Nothing. They were pawns, and the military should understand that. I didn't know that they were using enriched uranium. I knew they were using depleted uranium, but I thought it was only for shells. She said when they are trying to penetrate the ground, they use enriched uranium. These are war crimes. That's who your government is. They're war criminals. They're false flag inside job terrorists. And Patty says the last 4 major terrorist attacks were all inside jobs. And it was done in order to take the guns because they can't pay the Chinese in gold, and so they offered them coastal properties. The Chinese wanted coastal properties, but they said, you disarm the people first. That's what Patty said. That shows you she has a lot of inside information. Now remember, August to November, about 4 months, will be the roughest part of the passing of Planet X. She said if you want to save yourself, it's already too late. She produced some very believable images to support her claims, and she claims to be able to access computers at NASA and EPA and other government agencies, and she revealed that NASA is not a government agency, it's a private corporation. She said it's no more government than the Federal Reserve is. There's one more thing I would like to tell you. She said that 6 astronomers or scientists, these are top astronomers and scientists, had decided that they were going to talk and tell the people, and all 6 of them were killed recently. I haven't heard of it. I don't know who the scientists are, but I think that Patty might be murdered soon also. I would not be surprised. In fact, I am also looking for a bullet, but I'm old and it doesn't matter if they kill me. I don't want to die of thirst. I don't want to die frying under a microwave sky or dying under UV light, ultraviolet light. This is not for me. I'm going to continue my effort to inform and let the chips fall where they may. You all have a right to know what's coming, and your Nazi government will not tell you anything because they want you dead. That's the way it's been for a long time now, and I've been saying it from my first video because I've been reading and putting the pieces of the gigantic puzzle together, and I know what evil looks like. Government is pure evil. And if you didn't know that before today, the next 10 days are going to be enlightening, trust me. And all that propaganda you've been sucking up on the TV will now be blown away when the electric grid goes off and you have no TV and no drinking water. You'll be defecating outside because the house stinks from a toilet that can't be flushed. There's no water. The government wants you dead, and you're better off dead. And all you religious people out there who hounded me relentlessly and dumped your scriptures on my channel, I hope Jesus saves you from the frying sun's rays. And I got some advice for you. Pray while you cook. That's as much as I can say at this time. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for listening.
Really, it's a giant sun that exploded. I think they said it was Beetlejuice or something like that. So in my mind, when I read stuff like that in the news, I think it's, the forces behind the scenes or whoever's kind of orchestrating the media prepping people, subconsciously getting them ready for this type of event. First, it's just an explosion that looks like a sun, and then, hey, oh, it is a sun. So, do you have any physical evidence, like pictures that you can say without a shadow of a doubt, or files or white papers?
Yes, I do. In fact, there's some very good videos on the internet itself that are good photographic analysis. There's one called Multiple Suns Rise Over Halifax, Nova Scotia. Those are the keywords that a person would enter on YouTube to read it or view it. And you can see the sun. And then at the 3 o'clock position, you have Planet X. To the right of Planet X, you have a separate lens flare. Now, that doesn't reflect the lens flare, of course, in the water below, but Planet X is generating its own light, and you can see its reflection, therefore, in the water below. Next, I think a fog bank moves in, and it obscures the sun, but Planet X is still visible. A lens flare cannot do this. Now, that's one good example of something they could simply look up themselves on YouTube. There's also some good Davis Station South Pole videos out there. And there's, in my book, which is Planet X, The Arrival in 2017 by David Mead on Amazon, I've done a video. It's on page 15 or 16 or so of the book. And I have a section called Photographic Analysis of Planet X. And I study one video which another analyst did an extensive study on. And let me just sort of explain what happened. A fellow named Glenn Vaughn on April 11th, 2015, was flying down the Pacific side of Central America. He's a professor, an ex-professor at California University. He took a 20 megapixel raw file with a Sony digital camera, and he confirmed the report by sending it in to a particular analyst for review. He took it through an aircraft window. Now, an analysis of the metadata indicated it was taken at 240 dpi, very high resolution, and the metadata further showed the date, the time, the GPS coordinates. I think it was a Sony DSC HX50V camera. In any case, using Starry Night Professional version, the video, which is referenced in my book and which is on YouTube, did a field of view analysis, and he determined Mercury is above, in other words, superior conjunction with the sun, and the object in the field of view, therefore, is not Mercury. Mercury does not have wings, as does this object, and Mercury does not have the brightness or contrast of the unknown object. Now, the analyst also performed a gamma test on a paint program. Gamma testing shows if an object is hot or cold. Hot objects generate, of course, their own light like our sun. A lens flare would be a cold object. They read direct light, they don't generate it. So he started with a gamma of 1, reducing it by steps. At point 10, the gamma illustrates stark differences. At point 01, he shows the hottest, brightest objects on the video. He then reduced brightness to a value, I think, of -3 in contrast to +2. The hot objects fade in together, proving they're genuine. Then he ran a luminance test to determine the intensity of the object, and he determined it was behind the sun, not a reflection. There are actually wings on the object, which is clearly behind the sun. Now, he stated this is deeply disturbing. The reason is that gas tails of comets follow solar winds, and they're not visible until the comet's orbit is inside of Jupiter, at which point normally the luminosity at that point of the sun makes the tails of the comet or the planet visible. Of course, Planet X, we all call it Planet X or Nibiru, but it is a dwarf star. It's either a red dwarf or a brown dwarf star. Now, the object, which is clearly Planet X by deductive logic and process elimination, is therefore now between Mars and Jupiter. It's not in the outer reaches of the solar system. It can clearly be seen, especially from the southern hemisphere. Now, as of April 2015, therefore, the date of that video and the analysis, Nibiru is close enough to the sun so that the sun's light is reflected to the tail, making it appearing like wings. And there's one other quick comment I'd make, because actually that video had 2 parts. The second part was a lady who lives near where I do, Sanibel Island, Florida, Melissa Huffman. Now, you can look at this video itself on YouTube. I think it has more or less gone viral, and nearly 1 million people have looked at it. And this is a 2015 video. The object is very interesting. She pans the sky and shows the object and then the moon. Now, it's clearly a planet visible just north of the sun. You know, using stellarium and knowing the moon phases, comparing it to her video on the moon, you can go to the derived date, take away the atmosphere and the ocean, and you can determine the relationship of the stars to the horizon. So to determine the date, you basically just use moon charts, and the moon is well below the horizon in all dates after September 26, 2015. Therefore, the video was taken earlier. Now, September 2015 moon phases give us a comparable to the moon in the video. And if you look at the moon phases diagram to the actual picture of the moon, it has to have been photographed on September 23, 2015, based on moon phasing. Now, on that date, Mercury in stellarium is very dim, somewhat above the horizon. Also, I believe it's in a different location than the unknown object. All other planets are below the horizon. The video, therefore, conclusively and plainly shows an unidentified planet, or dwarf star, Planet X, of some significant magnitude quite clearly. So I can reach no other conclusion, and the analyst did himself, than this is a rare photo from this hemisphere of Planet X approaching us.
Wow. You know, and there's also speculation now, and I hadn't heard this until about a year ago, that not only is Planet X going to come our way, this dwarf star, but also a bunch of planets with it, like it's bringing in its own solar system. Is there evidence or truth to that?
Right. There's a number of videos there. I've seen some real good ones from the South Pole Telescope, and they indicate that there are a variety of moons around this. It's basically, as you say, it's its own solar system. A lot of people don't realize this, but binary, what we've got in our solar system here is obviously a binary twin. 76%, this is a fact, of all stars are binary twins. In fact, 16% are trinary twins. There are 3 suns, but ours has a binary companion, and it comes under the name of Planet X, Nibiru, and so forth, Nemesis. There are various names to it. But ours has a binary twin, and it's very common. It's extremely common, and it's basically what is approaching us. And apparently, from all descriptions, indications, reports, insider reports, photographs, and other sources of human and signal intelligence, it contains 5 to 7 moons around it. So it's a solar system approaching our solar system, which makes it extremely dangerous. The red dragon of Revelation 12 may well be, and I believe rather obviously is, Planet X, as is referred to in an earlier chapter of Revelation, I think Revelation chapter 8, in a similar manner. A colleague of mine at the university, one university in the western U.S., brought up a very interesting point, perhaps a cover-up to my attention. Here it is. Basically, he said, the areas of the dragon anomaly have been covered or patched up by Google Sky in the past. But one of the ways to actually see what is behind this patched out area is to use a program called Skyview by NASA. Skyview, what that is, it's a virtual observatory on the net. It generates images of any part of the sky from wavelengths of all regimes, radio to gamma. You just filter it. Now, when you view these images in various filters, you can see the actual color of this anomaly in Virgo is red, and it does look very menacing, as it appears to have a face like a dragon with two profound eyes. It's very intriguing and quite strange. Now, just for your listeners, I'll provide very briefly the right ascension and declination if they want to go to Skyview. And here it is. Just cut and paste this coordinate. Here's the right ascension, 13 hours, 50 minutes, 44 seconds. Here's the declination, and that would be minus 8 hours, 13 minutes and 59.7 seconds. So right ascension is the celestial equivalent of longitude, and in the sky latitude is called declination. So you just enter those coordinates, and then on Skyview you just choose the Iris 100 micron telescope setting, and there you are. You've never seen an object quite like this one. Now, the sign itself might be a sweeping parenthetic of that entire biblical 70th week of Daniel, which is a key to solving the most complex cryptogram in existence, the book of the Apocalypse, as to what it is, the